Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be going over how to be paid by God before the world pays you. So, what is your definition of being rich? What is your definition of living in wealth and abundance and, attaining riches and attaining uh, value, intrinsic value? Is it by the numeric digits within your bank account? Is it by, your bank account statements, the amount of money that's in your bank account, the amount of money that you're drawing in, whether it be from your business or your 9 to 5, or is it by spiritual currency? Getting to the point where you are no longer relying on seeing your reality change. You're no longer relying on outside sources and outside things outside of yourself to fill the void that's within yourself, right? So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the difference between getting paid by God versus getting paid by the world, right? And how you can be paid by God in order to get paid by the world. All right. So let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing with God, we have to understand that God or the universe is infinite and eternal, right? Let's say we ask said person, right? We ask Susan, where do you come from? They ask Susan, where is she from? Where does she come from? 9 times out of 10, Susan would say that she's from her mama. She might say she's from said neighborhood. She might be from this certain neighborhood. She might be from, a certain organization that she's a part of. We as human beings, we tend to, say that we are from such and such. We're from this such place, or we come from our parents and things of that nature. But the key is when you have that higher level of realization and you understand where you actually come from, we actually come from the universe. We actually come from source. We actually come from God, right? We are stardust children. We come from the cosmos. We are made up of stardust, right? We are made up of universal energy. That's why they say we are we are spiritual beings having a human experience, right? So we come from the infinite. We come from the universal consciousness. We come from that source that created everything in this entire universe, including this earth plane. Okay, so we have to understand that, right? And we have to understand also that the world is finite, right? The world is temporary. The world is only temporary. The world is ever changing. The world goes through ups and downs. Civilizations rise and fall, right? Money within the world goes through changes, goes through different changes. It's never, it's never the same, right? So we have to realize that the world is finite, right? The world probably won't exist forever, right? So we have to understand these things. We don't come from the world. We come from the universe. We come from that universal essence. We come from that universal energy, right? That's where we all come from, and that's where we all go to when we leave this planet, when we leave this earth plane. That's where we end up, and that's where we end up going, and that's where we are from. So we have to understand this. All right, so the next thing within God, everything happens in the spiritual before it can happen in the physical, right? So this universe, God, this universe, everything that exists in the universe, everything that exists in the universe existed before the earth ever came to be, before the earth was ever formed. So everything happens in the spiritual before it happens in the physical. Okay, so let's take for instance, me for example. I come up with a download that comes from the ether, that comes from the universal plane, right? And I had this thought in my mind. I have this idea that I downloaded from the ether, and then I might jot the idea down on a piece of paper, okay? And then I study what I've written. I study what I've taken note of, and then I come up with this YouTube video, right? I written this idea on a piece of paper on how to come up with a YouTube video, and then I was able to act on it. I was able to put forth the action to come up with this YouTube video, to come up with this idea, right? It could be with anything. It could be from a YouTube video. It could come from, a certain creation or a certain invention or things of that nature. But all in all, within this example, everything comes from the spirit. Everything comes from the spiritual plane. Everything comes from the spiritual ether before it can manifest within the physical. Okay? So, nothing can happen in the physical unless it manifests in the spiritual realm / mind first. Okay? Like I said, with that idea that I downloaded, everything comes from the mind. Everything comes from consciousness. Everything comes from the universal source before it can manifest into the physical, right? Just like the phone that you're watching this video on. Somebody had created that phone from their mind, from their conscious mind, right? And they're able to put it onto a 2D object like a computer, right? They're able to map out the different electronics in the different parts that go into the phone, right? And then they're able to manifest it into a 3D object, which you're using right now to watch this video, or your tablet or your computer, or whatever you're watching from. So everything that we have came up with, every invention, every creative idea has come from the universal mind, has come from our consciousness that we have downloaded into the physical realm. Okay? So, number 3, in its spiritual essence, money is an energy exchange. So, when you're working for a certain company, or if you're working for a certain governmental agency, right, and you get paid on a certain day, right, you think you're getting paid by the corporation, or you're getting paid by the company, or you're getting paid by the governmental entity. But in actuality, when you look at it from the grand scheme of things, when you look at it from a higher spectrum, you are ultimately paying yourself, right? When the person hands you the check, or a certain individual, your boss, your manager, your director, whoever it is, when they hand you that check, you are ultimately paying yourself, right? Because you are God. The person that's giving you the money, the person that's handing you the check is God. And once we align ourselves to this truth, you realize that you are ultimately paying yourself, right? Money is an energy exchange. Physical money that you have in your wallet, or the physical money that your certain company or certain organization gives you, it is meaningless. The physical aspect of money is meaningless. So when you look at it from a universal perspective, money is an energy exchange. Money is made up of energy. Okay? So like in the world, physical money is composed of fake zeros and ones that can be manipulated over time. So money can be manipulated by the people that own the money, right? Money has no value in its essence. Physical money has no type of intrinsic value, right? The money is made up of zeros and ones, and people can, especially the people that own the money, like say the government, they can do with the money as they please. They can manipulate the money. They can transfer the money. They can, give out the money. They can produce the money, right? They have ultimate control over the money. So money in its essence, the physical aspect of money, has no value. Okay? So number 4, money has a vibration, and you have a vibration about money, right? So all depends on the type of relationship that you have with money, right? When you look at it from an energetic, universal level, when you're vibrating at a higher frequency, right, and you understand the true essence of money, right? When you have a great relationship with money and you understand money on a universal level, that's when you start to manifest the amount of money that you wish to have, right? If you are living in scarcity, if you have a poverty type mindset, then, if you're afraid to spend money, then you're going to have a negative relationship when it comes to money. right? If you're filled with, trauma, if you're filled with, negative vibrations, if you just have an overall negative relationship when it comes to money, then that's how the energy between you and that money is going to be, right? So money has a vibration. You also have a vibration as well. Money is energy, and humans are energy as well. So use that energy wisely. Have that correlation between money. All right. Just because we're spiritual doesn't mean that we have to hate money, or we have to, say to ourselves, oh, I don't need money and this, that, and the third. You do need money because we live in this financial matrix, right? This financial matrix operates, within the money system, right? So we can't just ignore money and just not learn about money, learn the deeper aspects of money, because we live in a financial matrix and we need money in order to survive. We need money in order to do the things that we actually want to do. But it's important for us to understand the universal aspect of money. We have to understand the energetic level when it comes to money, and not just the physical money that they want us to always think about. Chasing money. That's what they want you to do, is chase money, right? When you're chasing money, it's just not gonna work out in the end, right? So within the world, money is intrinsically worthless. Only those who profit from it understand the inner workings of the money cult, right? So the people who own the money, the top 1% who own the majority of the money, they have the power and they have the capability to utilize the money and transmute the money as they please, right? So they're the ones who make the money. They're the ones who make up the money, right? And then they drizzle it down to let's say the working class people or the regular people, right? By the time that money gets to them, the money is already worthless, right? And that's why the 1% of the people who make the most money end up, housing and holding the majority of the money, right? That's why there's this clash between the higher class and the lower class. That's why we have all this inflation. That's why we have, these inner civil wars going on between the rich and the poor, right? Because the middle class, within the next few years, I would say like 5 to 10 years, the middle class will be gone. So it'll be between the upper class, the rich, and the lower class and the poor. Okay, so the 1% control the majority of the money, right? So number 5, we are abundance, right? We have to understand this. We are abundance because we come from, like I said, number 1, we are infinite and eternal. Okay, so we are made of abundance. The universe is abundance. God is abundance, and we have to, act like it because we are. Okay, so we are abundance. We can attract / manifest anything we want. Money equals energy, and humans equals energy. So by being in this right mindset, looking at money in a totally different way, looking at us in a totally different way, right? Just like with the law of attraction, the law of projection, all these different things, when we shift our vibration to a certain frequency, when we shift our vibration to a certain state, a certain mind state, we can attract many different things that we want, right? So, like number 6, a state of being, being in that state of being in that positive light, having a certain mindset, right? Doing the necessary work to understand ourselves and to raise our vibration, to raise our kundalini, and to raise our consciousness. Being in that state of being to where we're no longer relying on seeing reality change, right? We're in that mindset to where I'm frugal, everything comes to me, right? I don't need nothing. Therefore, if I don't need anything, everything comes to me, right? So taking action, right? Taking action is a very important step within this equation. Taking the necessary action to acquire such thing, right? Having that idea in your head, having that object that you want in your head, meditating on that, right? And then taking forth the action to achieve said goal, to achieve said dream, to achieve said manifestation. And that leads to having whatever you desire, whatever you want, whatever, success that you're trying to achieve. Doing it for your family, for your kids, whatever the case may be, right? Having that motivation to want to achieve something, and that'll lead you to having said thing. Okay? So within the world, everything is controlled by an outside entity, right? So within the world, everything is controlled by something outside of ourselves. And then we tend to operate within this system, within this broken system, relying on the system, relying on the government, thinking that they have their best interest in us, which is not the case at all. So we tend to rely on outside things and outside sources. The system is made for the elite. The system is made for the elect, right? They don't have their best interest in us. So how can they, do things for our benefit? How can they do things and perform necessary decisions to benefit us? It's only benefiting themselves. They're the ones who create this system, so it benefits them. It doesn't benefit us. So everything is controlled by an outside entity. Money, for example. Money is controlled by the Federal Reserve System. Now, the Federal Reserve System is the central bank of this country, the Central Bank of America that controls all of the money within the country. So they have the power and they have the capability to distribute the money any way they please. They can create money. They can, inflate the economy. They can deflate the economy, inflate the money, deflate the money. They can do anything that they please with their money, right? So that's why I believe, things such as crypto and Bitcoin, these online currencies, right? Because they're not controlled by the government. Anything that's controlled by the government, I'm with 100%. So these things, these cryptocurrencies, the Bitcoin, all these different things, they're not controlled by the government, right? Because we have to have the power, because the money used to be controlled by us, right? It all started with a trading system. We trade for goods and services. Then it ended up transitioning to a barter system, right? Then we had the gold standard, trading goods with gold and things of that nature. And then it slowly started trickling down to money, safe houses, and then it came with the banking system. And then they developed the credit and debit system. It just started trickling down and down and down until the government started controlling the majority of the money, right? Because we used to have control over the money, right? And we always had control over our money. That's our God-given birthright, to have control over our own money. But that's not the case right now, because we have no control over our money. But like I said, with crypto and Bitcoin, we're slowly starting to have control over our own money. We're able to distribute and use our money, as a whole, right? We have the freedom. We have our own freedom when it comes to money, okay? So within the world, people tend to take action, which leads to having, which leads to being. So with money, for example, people take action, within their job, or, within their 9-to-5 job. They take all this action. They take all this action and action and action. They, work 12 plus hours a day. They, they're always working, things of that nature. So they end up having said money, right? Let's say, for example, the person that's, working a 9-to-5, who works till they're 65, who works till they're like 60 or 65, and then, they try their hardest to gain all this money, but you can't get rich working a 9-to-5 job in itself, right? So they end up taking all this action, then they might, acquire a certain amount of money, money to live off of. They might not be rich, but they acquired a certain amount of money that's good to them, to where they're able to live off of. And they end up becoming, successful, whatever their definition of successful is. But by the time they get to 60, 65, they don't have, they wasted all them years and wasted all their life, working, just working, to where they're not able to, enjoy themselves because they're already old. They're already older. They start to have health problems, right? They've been working so much and working so hard that they start having health problems. They have to have all this surgery and, acquiring all this medicine, things of that nature. And they're not able to live their lives once they're in the retirement stage. They're not able to live their lives fully. Okay, so we have to think about this. When it comes to successful people that you know of, when it comes to the higher ups, the higher powers, people such as like Donald Trump, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, do you actually think these people, these successful people, operate within this equation? Do you really believe that they operate within taking action first, which equates to having, which equates to being? They don't. They know how to alchemically convert their energy to whatever they want. They know how to use their mind, right? Like people like Bill Gates, another example. They know how to operate within this equation. They know how to alchemically convert their energy to something that they want. They know how to manifest anything that they want with the power of their mind, right? Because a lot of people, the average people, the average person, they operate within this equation because that's what we were taught. That's what we were growing up with, right? Taking assertive action, right? That's what we were brought up with from generation to generation to generation. That's how we were programmed to do, right? Especially within the school system, okay? Because the school system pumps nothing but slaves. It's just pumping out slave after slave after slave, and then we work a certain amount of years, and then we retire at a certain age, and we're not able to live life to the fullest. Okay, so these people that I mentioned, they don't operate within this equation, right? They don't, operate within the world, what everybody else is doing, right? Like I said, they alchemically convert. They know the process of alchemy, right? They know how to use the power of their mind. They know how to use the esoteric knowledge. They know how to use this stuff, right? They know the higher power of utilizing your energy, your universal mind, to manifest anything you want, to manifest anything that they want, right? So we have to understand this and realize this, okay? So this is getting paid by God versus getting paid by the world, right? When you are getting paid by God, when you develop that currency within you, when you develop that spiritual money, that spiritual essence within you, then everything will take care of itself. The rest will take care of itself, right? When you get paid by God, when you get paid by the universe, you get paid by the world. That's how it works. That's how it has to work, right? When you rely on action, when you rely on the world, when you try to become successful within the world, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work out in your favor, right? So we have to think on a deeper level. We have to, not operate within this world. We have to operate within our divine power, because that's where we came from and that's where we originate from, right? Because the world can be manipulated by many different people. It can be manipulated by you, right? You are a glitch in the matrix. When you're not participating in the matrix, when you're not participating in the flow of the matrix, you can manipulate the matrix. You can bend reality to your will, right? So we have to understand this. We have to have this concept about ourselves. The world could be manipulated in many ways, right? But you can manipulate the world for the greater good of yourself and for the greater good of all people. Okay? So have that type of mindset and really understand this on a deeper level and utilize this in your life to your advantage. All right? So till next time, and always remember, all power resides from within, and always keep the faith because God in the universe is always working for you. Take care, guys, and God bless.
I'm not going to tell falsehoods to the American people. I'll leave that to others. I'll leave that to others. I'll leave that to others.